あ、お前の奥さんにさ、恋人のふりをしてほしいんだ。
え
Can I ask your wife to help me with something important? Sam didn't expect such a question to matter. He and Hikari had been together long enough to understand each other without needing many words. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was steady. And to Sam, steadiness felt like success. Yoshino had been part of that steady world for years. A longtime friend. The kind of friendship shaped by shared struggles, mutual favors, and the quiet assumption that loyalty didn't need to be questioned. When Yoshino reached out, it didn't feel like a request. It felt like continuity, like something that naturally belonged to their history. The request itself was framed gently. A work-related social gathering, a space filled with polite smiles and unspoken expectations. Yoshino explained that having someone accompany him would ease certain pressures, help him navigate an environment where appearances mattered more than intentions. He wasn't asking for anything improper, just presence, just support, and he asked for it honestly. Sam hesitated, though he couldn't immediately explain why. There was no clear reason to say no, no visible threat. Hikari listened quietly, thoughtful rather than alarmed. She saw it as a simple favor, one bounded by trust and clarity. So they agreed. That day, when Hikari went to the party, Sam noticed something unfamiliar stirring beneath his calm. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't suspicion. It was subtler than that, a faint tightening in his chest, as if something important had been placed slightly out of alignment. He told himself it was nothing, a temporary discomfort, the kind that passes if you don't give it too much attention. But as the evening unfolded, Sam found himself waiting in a way he hadn't expected, not just for Hikari to return home, but for reassurance he couldn't quite name. He wasn't afraid of what might happen. He was unsettled by what he was feeling. And somewhere in that quiet waiting, Sam began to understand that some choices don't announce themselves as problems. They arrive disguised as kindness, as reasonableness, as something any good person would say yes to. And that is often how the most important questions enter our lives, softly, politely, asking for just a little help. The days after the gathering returned to their usual rhythm, at least on the surface. But inside Sam, something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make him more attentive to his own inner weather. He noticed how often his thoughts drifted back to that evening. Not to the event itself, but to his reaction to it. The way he had felt unsettled without being able to justify it. For someone who valued rational explanations, this ambiguity was uncomfortable. He wondered whether the discomfort meant a lack of trust or simply a deeper awareness of how much the marriage mattered to him. Hikari, for her part, sensed the change without naming it. She didn't feel accused or constrained, but she felt observed in a new way. Not watched, just noticed. Their conversations remained respectful, but they began to circle certain topics without landing on them. This kind of silence wasn't hostile. It was cautious, each of them trying, in their own way, to preserve harmony by not disturbing it too much. Many days later, Yoshino asked again. This time, the request sounded almost identical. Another work-related occasion. Another explanation about pressure, expectations, the subtle politics of professional spaces. Nothing inappropriate, nothing urgent. And yet, Sam felt the hesitation arrive faster, heavier. His first instinct was still to agree years of friendship had trained him to respond that way. But now there was a second voice inside him, quieter but more persistent, asking a different question. Not, is this wrong? But how does this feel? Psychologically, Sam was experiencing something many people struggle to articulate. But emotionally, his sense of equilibrium was being tested. He wasn't afraid of betrayal. He was afraid of slowly disconnecting from his own needs while trying to be generous. Hikari listened again, just as thoughtfully as before. She didn't feel coerced. She didn't feel endangered. But she noticed Sam's pause, the way his words took longer to form. That pause carried information. It wasn't control. It was vulnerability. And vulnerability, when left unspoken, can quietly turn into distance. Sam agreed once more, but the agreement didn't settle inside him the way it used to. Instead, it left a residue of feeling that he had crossed a boundary without knowing where that boundary truly was. What Sam was beginning to confront wasn't a moral dilemma, but an emotional one. The realization that kindness, when it consistently asks us to override our inner signals, can create a form of quiet exhaustion. And that exhaustion doesn't announce itself as anger or conflict. It shows up as doubt, as restlessness, as the sense that something important is being postponed in the name of being accommodating. Sam wasn't worried about outcomes. He was worried about himself, about how long someone can keep saying yes while slowly losing clarity about why they feel unsettled at all. Sam noticed he wasn't exhausted physically, but inwardly tired of carrying an unspoken question. Hikari returned home calm as always, and they talked about ordinary things. Yet beneath the surface, Sam felt the weight of what had been left unsaid. His discomfort was never really about Yoshino, nor about distrust toward Hikari. It was about the growing distance between his actions and his emotional truth. He had been protecting everyone else's comfort while neglecting his own, slowly placing his marriage in competition with his sense of obligation. Many people confuse kindness with endurance, believing that being good means absorbing discomfort silently. But unacknowledged discomfort doesn't disappear, it accumulates. And over time, it often shows up not as anger, but as withdrawal. Sam chose honesty over silence. He spoke without accusation, sharing how the repeated requests made him feel. Not because anyone was wrong, but because something inside him needed attention. Hikari listened without defensiveness. She heard vulnerability, not control. And vulnerability, when met with presence, restores balance. There were no ultimatums, only understanding. Silence is not always peace. Discomfort is information. Listening to it early allows relationships to adapt instead of erode. True kindness includes yourself. And sometimes, the most meaningful act of care is allowing yourself to be heard. If this story resonated with you, like the video, subscribe for more reflective stories and share it with someone who might need this reminder today.